Welcome back to our local 888 podcast. We're doing our special series called 8 Questions from 888. And we're honored today to have a true advocate, not just for our workers, but for the entire city of Boston. Um, it was a real honor to be able to work last year, to be able to help with a few campaigns. And this one was near and dear to my heart. Um, she is entering her second term as a city councilor at large and her first term as the president of the Boston City Council. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you Ruthzee Louijeune.
Hi, Tony. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and to finally be on this podcast. I know we've been planning and strategizing for some time, so I'm happy that I finally made it and happy to talk to everyone, members, and everyone else.
Well, we're grateful to have you because I know in our history, excuse me, I know that I've dealt with folks in the past who have. It's very easy to speak things and say I support and in passing, but we believe in active participation. And right out of the gates, I knew the content of your character when you said, "No, let's go here, let's go there, let's meet our people." And I knew right after that that I not only gained an ally for our workforce, but a friend. So I'm going to go right into the questions here. First of them are for our members. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey into the presidency of the city council?
Well, thank you, Tony, and thank you for all of those really kind words. It really, being in elected office really is about listening, and it's about making sure, we're not in these positions to be symbols. We're in these positions to do work. And so, as you stated, I am in my second term on the council. I had my first term last term, and on January 1st, the first day of the new year, thanks to the charter that requires us to have our first meeting on the first Monday of the year. That was January 1st. After our inauguration, my colleagues unanimously voted me to be the president of the Boston City Council. It came after a first term where there was a lot going on. There was a lot of media attention on the council for reasons that are less than that were, more salacious than they were about the work. I had an opportunity to lead on the council, leading the redistricting efforts after a judge rejected our attempt to make a map. I did not lead it on the first go round, but I led it on the second go round and was able to get 10 of my colleagues to sign off on the map, and the federal court agreed with our work. And so I think that leadership, that ability to show my ability to bring people together to find solutions is what has led me to this presidency as I continue to navigate and build a body that is collegial, where we're able to work together and where we're able to just meet the needs of the residents of the city of Boston.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to watch on New Year's Day the swearing in of our new city councilors, as well as you taking the gavel for the first time. And it did feel that there was this, the sun rose again, so to speak, in the chambers at City Hall. And we are very optimistic through your leadership as to where we're going to go collaboratively as a city council, as a city. So again, thank you for imparting your goodwill and change and understanding that we all need to work together to make this city what it needs to be. So again, your advocacy isn't just well documented, it's actually experienced by our members. Could you tell us what your experiences have been engaging with our workers, with our members? And these are the people who make our city run every day. What are you learning from your terms and just from your life experience about what our workers bring to make this city work?
First of all, our city does not work without our dedicated city workers who work sometimes and unfortunately around the clock to make sure that everyone's needs are being met. It is People are definitely meritorious of all of our respect, and that we deserve to affirm their dignity in their paychecks, and that includes in the workers, the local 888 workers. It includes those working in our 911 operators who are often working in situations under duress and of stress, and around the clock force overtime to make sure that when people themselves, when our residents are in distress, that they have a calm voice on the other end, picking up and helping them navigate traumatic, scary situations. And I've just learned You and I, we and some other folks over at BPD toured the operations center and just saw how dedicated and committed our workers are, and how honestly they can sometimes be the difference between life and death. And so it is incredibly important that we honor the work of our of all of our workers, including our local 88 members, and that we find and strategize ways to make work more manageable for our members. It's incredibly important that we address issues of burnout, that we address issues of respect and dignity, and we do that through manageable work hours. We do that through thinking about how we can civilianize workspaces. That's the work of all of us working together and collaboratively to solve problems.
Yeah, that was one of the highlights of my year last year, being able to tour my old stomping ground, so to speak, of Boston
Mm.
911, where I worked for nearly 2 decades. And to see your presence there, I noticed that folks started looking a little bit differently, saying, wow, we're not used to having someone come up here from the city council to take a look at what we actually do and know what we need to know, which I felt that there was value in having that one-on-one experience. We can do large tours of people, and it's great, don't get me wrong, but that led me into that our next question. With that experience in Boston 911, knowing the difficult time that people have had during their careers up there, and post pandemic, where people got to work remotely and these folks didn't, and were subjected to an incredible amount of burnout and people who were resigning. And I know that you've had at your forefront, because this is my favorite thing about when I see you. You bring up, I don't have to ask. You're like, hey, Tony, we got to talk 911. We got to talk BCYF. We got to talk
Mhm.
this. It is always at the forefront of your mission to make workplaces better. What do you envision in the next few years for, in your role, how you can advocate for our members?
Well, one of the best ways that we're able to do that is during the budget process when we talk to administration about, how our workers are being treated. I know that there are other colleagues, my other colleagues are doing more substantive work like Councilor Braden on really addressing the issues that our 911 operators are facing. I think that there is a tremendous amount of political will that wants to help us dig out of this hole and wants to help our workers feel respected and honored and dignified. We'll do that via the budget to make sure that we are staffing appropriately. We'll do that by making sure that HR at BPD, which we know has had some churn and some is actually, working to turn around when people apply for jobs, that they're given interviews and that we're able to slot people in so that we can get people in and find more incentivize people to stay at 911. There's some people who come in and we know who then go off to become police officers or serve the city in another capacity. We need to create better incentives to keep people here. You're not going to do that if you're forcing people into overtime, not letting people take their birthdays off and things of that nature. So those are the things that we're going to continue to work on the budget process. Again, this is a great window to do that. And I believe on Friday, um, we're going to be, or I think it is on Thursday, we're going to have questions that we want to send to the administration um, for the upcoming budget process, and definitely going to include questions about our 911 operators, our BCYF workers, to make sure that folks are getting treated with dignity and respect, and that we are building workforces that treat people, that show that we honor people.
And we appreciate your advocacy, and the fellow members of the city council and the mayor for their advocacy to ensure that these positive changes are taking place, not only just in the immediate short term to stop the hemorrhaging, but in the long term to create a new process for a healthy work environment, a balanced work environment. So, as we had mentioned, 911 isn't the only show in town here that we have. We have many workers in the city of Boston. And I know at 888, we have been trying to raise the ships of our least paid or compensated workers who are out there performing some of the hardest work possible, such as we mentioned BCYF. So, what are we doing to help achieve a more living wage and housing security for these people? Because even when I worked for the city in multiple roles, uh, I would come out in the parking lot late at night, and sometimes I'd see windows fogged up in cars because people just couldn't afford to the rent in the city, let alone ownership, which is a distant dream for many. So, what are we doing in your role to help ensure that people will make this city who make the city run will achieve financial and housing stability?
That's an excellent question, and it's an unfortunate one that we get because of just how expensive the cost of housing are. First thing my office did was, we've been focusing on housing for vulnerable populations from the very beginning. I have a background as a housing attorney representing folks facing eviction and foreclosure, so housing is the number one issue that we see here in the city, and we require for our municipal workers to live in the city of Boston. And so if we are demanding they live here, we need to make sure that their wages reflect salaries where people can afford to live. And even if it's with a roommate or just that gives people the opportunity to think of what building a life could look like in Boston. Right now, our salaries aren't doing that, and so we ordered the city of Boston to do a municipal wage study on our lowest paid workers, and to think about what would it look like to create a municipal minimum wage, so that we say that we are not paying any worker below this threshold, because we know that that is not a living wage. And we know that we're about to scale up again on the fight for an increased minimum wage, right? Because that the fight for 15 was a successful fight, and now we know that that's nowhere near enough. And so
Fact.
to raise a family, to just live even as a single person in the city of Boston. And so the fights continue. We're continuing to have those conversations with administration during this budget season. We're definitely going to elevate that as well.
Thank you for trying to raise those ships, because, again, it's not just the people who are making a decent wage. It's the most affected people we have are usually the people who fight the hardest for our communities, are the least paid. So thank you so much for doing that. So I knew that Local 888, along with a couple of other unions in the city, one of the things that we're most proud of is the Boston Housing Trust for our members. Um, why is it crucial to elevate and promote such programs as the Housing Trust? And what other programs can you recommend for our members who wish to remain residents of the community that they serve?
Well, it's incredibly important that we find ways to support the affordable housing needs of our residents, to reduce the financial burden that we talked about. So I am a big champion of the Boston Housing Trust Fund, as it works between the city and Local 888 for members in certain departments to be able to be eligible with grants and loans to make housing more affordable. And so we do that, through this housing trust fund. We also have through our linkage fees, it's a fee that commercial developers pay. Some of that money goes into neighborhoods, jobs trust, and other. The majority of the money goes into affordable housing trust, so that we can build more housing, so that we can create more affordable home ownership and rental opportunities for people. Home ownership, you say that it's a distant dream for many, but it really shouldn't be. We should really be able to give people the opportunity to own, and not only is ownership, is it a wealth building opportunity, but it's also stability for households and for families and for children. So we need to continue working towards that. Every emergency assistance, fuel assistance, home improvement, home ownership, all of these things that the Housing Trust does, we need to continue to champion and continue to see that as a model for how we show up for people, how we show up for our workers, and how we show up for our residents.
So circling back just a little bit, your first term was smack dab at the beginning in the middle of a pandemic. And we did see a lot of the people who back in the day had the "you're lucky to have a job" mindset, because, for many years, municipal jobs were looked at as hitting the lottery for a career and a pension. Um, that seems to be going away. And I think that's reflective in our staffing issues across every job, and not just in the public sector, but the private sector. The worker mindset is now shifted to respect and dignity, as you said. What would you like to see happen to retain our most talented employees and recruit a new workforce who prioritizes the work life balance?
That's an excellent question. So again, respect and dignity, first and foremost, has to be in how we pay people. If you respect me, and if you are trying to affirm my dignity, make sure you reflect that in my paycheck. So I think that's really important. Having bosses that recognize your value, recognize the value of workers, and realize that in the city we're not in the business of making a profit, so it's not a profit orientation, but it's a problems orientation of solving those problems. And so we have city workers who are helping us solve some of our most difficult problems. Respect and dignity means honoring that. honoring that with recognition, honoring that by creating safe spaces for rest in the workplace. I know that the 911 operators have that, and we want to make sure that that's a space that they're able to maintain and that they're able to maintain for themselves, so that they can take some R&R and have a bit of break. It means advancement opportunities. What are the career pathways towards management or towards increased responsibility, which comes with increased pay? How are we respecting, when none of us were meant to be widgets, none of us were meant to just work, 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 work. How are you respecting your time for rest and for time off to be with family, for bereavement? Simple things like having time off to grieve the loss of a loved one. The fact that those end up becoming grievance issues, no pun intended, or issues between labor and management are just, there's some ground rules that we should have. And I think that when people see sort of funny business happening around your ability to take time off, or your ability to have your birthday off, or to take your kids to school because you're being forced to work overtime, that's not healthy for anyone. So we do see staffing shortages across city government, across different industries, and labor shortages. And we need to think about ways of how are we onboarding people to these jobs quicker? How are we making these jobs more attractive? And oftentimes I have an employee, a staffer, who before she worked for me, she had a very popular tweet that went out when jobs ask you for, I want to see 3 references. Um, the person interviewing, the interviewee should be able to say, and I'd like to request 3 happy employees that I can speak to, so that I can know that I am entering into an environment that is healthy, that is sustainable, and that cares about me, not only as a worker, but as an individual. And so, are we creating happy and content employees needs to be the question. And if not, we need to turn to the workers to see what more we can do.
To know that that person is on your staff, I just felt goosebumps on that because of the simple fact of, could you imagine our workplaces and how they would operate if it was that two-way street dynamic of, all right, let me get 3 of your employees to tell me how cool it would be to work here and how I'd be treated.
Yeah.
We would see change instantaneously if that was the ground rules for everything. But at the same time, we do know that this year is going to be crucial on a federal level for the upcoming elections. And we're trying to advocate for more people to understand that their voice means something and to be active in electing our officials. And can you give us your thoughts on why our members should not just vote, but also become more politically active to ensure the right candidate who supports things such as labor is elected?
Yes, I mean, it is. I always will start off this, and I'm an elected official, I'm a lawyer, and I've worked a lot on democracy, on elections, on that. I also just want to be upfront with everyone before I say what's to come. I am not selling anyone a pipe dream by saying voting is going to solve all of our problems. There's no way. That's just not how it's set up. It's not, there's more agency required there. But voting is going to help us solve some of our problems. And it's important that we elect people who care about working class families, who care about the issues of workers, and believes that every worker should have a union. We definitely, definitely need to be engaged on the federal level. We saw what the lack of engagement could look like, and the type of leaders who really don't care about working class people, who don't care about Black and brown people, who don't care about unions. And we have, no elected official is perfect. I always say, like, who is it that you want to be fighting with and sometimes against, right? And that is who we want to elect. We want to elect people who we can move, who will listen to us, and who will hear us out. And so engagement on the federal level is so important. I will always tell people, as a local elected, that your local elections and your local officials are the ones that matter if you care about your schools, your parks, everything. But we also need good policy happening at the federal level. We want good modeling of what good politics and what good governance looks like. And so, yeah, I mean, voting is not going to solve it all, but it is a big part of the solution of inching us towards progress, of centering us on understanding that we can even have creativity and ingenuity in the workplace, whether they're talking about a 4-day work week or whether we're talking about different things that will respect you as a worker, that will realize the issues of the racial wealth gap and all the ways we failed intentionally through policy, our Black and Brown communities. And our working class communities, and how we make up for that gap. And leadership at the federal level is important, just sort of helping us set a roadmap for what justice and equity really looks like. So I do really encourage everyone to be involved in elections all the time, right? Federal, state, and local. And engagement, civic engagement is so important. We pay taxes, and we invest in public goods like our public schools, our public roads, our public libraries, our public parks. Voting is one way for you to express your feelings and your thoughts on all of those, on how your tax dollars are used. And it's not just voting, it's volunteering, it's writing op-eds, it's leading protests, it's being engaged in your union. It's all of the ways in which civic engagement is important, and voting is one really important way of that engagement.
Yep, knocking on doors,
Yep.
making the phone call. I very
Many
much
of the things
believe.
that you did for me, Tony, and many of the things that local 88 members did for me, which
And
honestly, campaigns, you have to be so nimble. You don't have a big staff. It depends on people whose visions for the city are aligned. And I'm glad that I was able to find alignment with local 888. You all were, as people would send me pictures of John at doors with my t-shirt on, right? That's what it looks like to be in deep partnership, and it's not a tit for tat. I support and stand up for our local 911 operators, our folks who work at BCYF, not because you all knocked on doors for me, although that helped. It's also because it's the right thing to do. Caring for our workers and centering our working class residents is the right thing to do. And I'm glad that we are aligned in our vision for the city and our vision for workers, because that makes the work, the knocking on doors, the phone banking, the donating, all of that, it makes it a lot easier when you find alignment and vision.
John Peavy is an all-star, and I don't know how I'd be able to work daily without him. And you know his value as well. He is a
Yes.
wonderful human being, and I'd like to call him the brother I never had. And the folks at 888 are incredibly lucky to have him.
That's
Uh,
awesome. Yeah, no, someone sent me a picture of him showing up at their door with a Ruthzee t-shirt. And I actually don't know if I ever told John that, and how deeply it touched my heart when that person sent me that picture. So thank you, John.
And he shot me a text. He goes, "Hey, what size T-shirt are you?" And around my house, the Ruthzee shirt is a very popular item. I will
Oh,
say that. So,
awesome.
one of the things that Local 888 is we are aware that we have a majority of female members, well over 50 or 60% identify as female. What advice would you give not just every worker, but the female worker who may be on the fence wanting to run for an elected position?
That's an excellent question. It takes a lot more people to convince a woman to run than a man to run, because it's not an easy task, right? There's a lot of personal sacrifice involved. There's a lot of time on the phone raising money. There's so much work involved, but we need more women running for office. Women care so deeply about community and about families, and about people, that we need more people who really do care about community and less about ego in these positions. And so I'm happy to always be a sounding board for anyone thinking about running. Do it, because we need more good people in office. We need more women in office. Yes, there are sacrifices involved, but there's joy and beauty too. And there's an ability to really build this collective shared vision of what the city of Boston that we deserve. How do we share the prosperity and the wealth of the city? How do we make Boston a more inclusive city, a more fun city where we can all thrive, that is welcoming to our immigrants and to our migrants and to those who've lived here for many a generation, those who are new transplants from Memphis, or wherever they find themselves from, that Boston can be your home. And I think we have a woman a woman governor, a woman mayor of the city of Boston. And I think the time for leadership is now, even in moments, when we experience moments where people want to peel us back from the progress we've made. I tell people ever forward, the only direction we're going in is forward.
Thank you for your leadership for every member of the city of Boston. And before we go, there is an event taking place next Wednesday. I believe that's the 21st, correct?
Yes, on the 21st, we're having our Black History Month celebration. at City Council at noon, from noon to 2, in which we'll be honoring some of our local businesses. It will be catered by Larry J's in the Seaport, Seaport Pioneer. So I hope everyone can make it to Boston City Hall, the fifth floor INL Chamber, next Wednesday at noon. And then that Thursday, that's the 22nd, we'll be at Park 54 at 6 p.m. Myself, President of the Council, and Councilor Warrell, the Vice President of the Council, we'll be doing a karaoke game night and karaoke night at Park 54 in Hyde Park. So we really do hope everyone can come out.
My old stopping grounds, Hyde Park. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your leadership and your advocacy. And I know we at 888 cannot wait to see what you're able to bring the city in your new role. And thank you as always. And I'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you so much, Tony. See you then.
Take care. And
Okay,
thank you,
bye.
everyone, for tuning in again for our very first episode this time of 8 Questions with 888. Thank you again. Have a great day.